My name is Justin McDonald, and I am a student at GCC making this video presentation for Thom Simmons' Business 205 course on the Principles of Management. Today I will be focusing on leadership, which is Chapter 14 in a textbook assigned to this class titled Principles of Management, or MGMT. It was written by Chuck Williams and published by Cengage Learning. In this video I'll go over some key differences on what a manager is versus what a leader is. I will explain who leaders are and what leaders do, and I'll go over some leadership traits and styles that make effective leadership possible. I will also explain what good leadership means to me. I'm including some real-life examples of effective and ineffective leadership and how leading differs from managing. I will start this assessment on leadership by going over what makes a leader different from a manager or a boss. Leadership is defined as a process of influencing others to achieve organization or group goals, whereas management is just a process of getting work done through others. Bill Fleming, who is president of one of the largest construction companies, makes a great point about what the difference between managing and leading by the way he responds to someone who asks him a question he does not know the answer to. A manager might say something in response like, "Here's what I would want you to do," or something like, "This is what I would do." Well, a leader would want others to help figure out the problem and honestly believes that others who are immersed in the problem could know a lot more about the issues than themselves or the person in charge. So instead, the leader might ask others what they think is going to work. Just simply knowing the knowledge and skills of good leadership will not make the task of leadership less daunting, but knowing these things will help a leader navigate their journey. One obvious difference between the leader and a manager is that leaders are more focused on doing the right thing, where managers, well, they're more concerned with doing things right. A great example of this could be a manager at a fast food restaurant. The fast food manager will follow the rules as close as possible. The manager will use his power, his management power, to get others to do their job. And the manager abides by whatever his corporate superiors would tell him to. A leader at a fast food restaurant may, inspire others in the company to do their job better and more efficiently, or, the leader does what is expected of them with ease and doesn't get upset when minor issues arise. The leader won't point fingers and blame others automatically when things fall apart. Instead, the leader looks within themselves for what went wrong and uses that as an opportunity to learn and grow. Leaders will begin their questions with, "What should we be doing? How can we drive more business to this establishment? What are your goals as an employee here? What do you like about your job? What other positions at the company interest you the most?" Managers might say something more like, "How can we do what we're already doing better? Like, how can we make this sandwich look and taste better? Or how would you like to work at a different shift? Can you make this finished product look a little better? Can we get better numbers on this product? Or how do we make more money?" Leaders focus more on vision and missions and goals and objectives. Managers, they concentrate more on productivity and efficiency, and they see themselves as preservers of the company's status quo. Leaders, they see themselves as promoters of change and challenge the status quo. Leaders encourage risk-taking and inspire creativity. IBM changed its business from manufacturing and selling computers to now providing technology services and consulting. Virginia Ramady, who is the CEO of this $100 billion company, says by taking risks and change, one can obtain fuel for future growth. She goes on to say that she does not believe in the inevitable or think that things must and will turn out a certain way. She says whatever business you're in, it's good to commoditize over time, and you should have to keep moving to a higher value and change. In other words, growth and comfort don't coexist with each other. No business can sit back comfortably forever and just watch pile up. Eventually, the business will go through a slump or crash acting this way. The leader must adapt to changes and find new ways to make the company more valuable to the consumer and the people that work for it. A manager administers, while the leader, well, they innovate. Managers will tend to have a relatively short perspective. They are more concerned with controlling and limiting the choices of others. Leading differs in the aspect because they take a more long-term view on things and focus more on expanding people's options and choices. A typical manager will solve problems so others can do the work. Like, when a hospital supervisor instructs its doctors and nurses on how to treat its patients and how to follow normal protocol. Most managers could be leaders if they were able to motivate, communicate, inspire, and encourage employees toward a higher level of productivity. Employees follow directions of a manager because they are forced to. An employee may voluntarily follow the directions of a leader because they believe in who the leader is as a person, what they stand for. Employees follow the manager's demands based on their job descriptions and titles. A leader will motivate their staff to come up with their own methods of solving problems and inspire others to find new ways to solve the problems. For years, we were taught that management is forecasting, controlling, budgeting, and planning. Managers were taught to manage, not to lead. New supervisors and older management vets were taught how to assign work to subordinates, how to evaluate teammates' work, how to consult people on performance problems, as well as firing and hiring staff. Basically, we're all taught that managers would be the person who knew what to do, and they call the shots. Today, we understand that the old school view of managers' duties is extremely insufficient for today's workforce. But leadership and management must go hand in hand. They are not the same thing, but they are linked and complement each other. Any efforts to separate the two will likely cause more problems as it solves. The manager is also a copy, whereas the leader is original. Like a music director for a symphony orchestra is emulating what their superiors accomplished prior, or I guess you could say a carbon copy. Bob Dylan, for instance, he's a leader and created his own music and developed his own unique sound and style. The manager, maintains while the leader, they develop. We must stop pretending that human energy is not a factor in team success. Anyone who's been on a team knows that team energy and trust is what team success is all about. You can't just wave carrots in people's faces to get them to perform better. If people don't care about the mission, about their peers, one another, or about their leaders, the team will fall off the rails and lose steam, which is inevitable. Trust-based and empathetic human leadership is the only effective and profitable way to lead any organization. Successful leaders are not like other people. Leaders are different from non-leaders in their drive, desire to lead, honesty, integrity, self-confidence, emotional stability, cognitive ability, and knowledge of the business. The term drive refers to high levels of effort and is characterized by achievements, initiative, motivation, energy, and tenacity. Leaders are ambitious people that try to make improvements or achieve success in what they're doing. Because a leader's initiative, they have strong desires to promote change and solve problems. Leaders typically have more energy. Why? Well, because they have to. Given the long hours they put in and followers' expectations for leaders, and they've expectations of the followers is that leaders should be always positive and upbeat. The lead needs to be physical, mental, and emotionally vital. Leaders are also more tenacious than non-leaders and are better at overcoming problems and obstacles that would deter most people or put them in debt or get them in trouble. Some folks wonder if leaders are made or born. I even wonder that myself. But true leaders, they ignore this notion. You know why? Because they concentrate on developing the leadership qualities that lead to success. Management traits are relatively stable characteristics, like abilities, psychological motives, or consistent patterns of behavior. According to this textbook, chapter 14, leaders have special traits that differ from non-leaders, like drive, the desire to lead, honesty, integrity, self-confidence, emotional stability, cognitive ability, and you got to have knowledge of the business. The trait theory mentioned in the book says effective leaders possess a similar set of traits or characteristics. Leaders that possess the drive trait have a high level of effort and characterized by achievements, motivation, initiative, energy, and tenacity. As far as achievement and ambition goes, leaders will always try to make improvements or achieve success in what they are doing. And because of their initiative, these leaders have strong desires to solve problems and promote change. Successful leaders also have a stronger desire to lead than most managers and non-leaders. These leaders want to be in charge and think about ways to influence or convince others on how things should be done or avoided. Being honest and truthful to others is important to leaders and is actually the cornerstone of any leadership. Like it says in the textbook, when leaders are honest, subordinates are willing to overlook other flaws. Take a look back at Bernie Sanders, for instance, during the presidential campaign of 2016. Bernie was viewed by his followers as someone who was honest and someone who cared about all people in America. Probably was the only politician in U.S. history that has not contradicted himself and has always held his ground and was honest in the history of pretty much all of his public speeches. To me, Bernie Sanders would have been a great leader if he was elected president. I would be willing to bet most people would overlook Bernie Sanders' more obvious flaws if people discovered how honest he was compared to other politicians. We all know he sits on the throne now in this Oval Office, and to most people this is an uncomfortable topic of conversation. It's clear that there were enough people that overlooked some of our current commander and tweets' more damaging flaws that led him up to being elected into the office. I tend to believe most people don't feel like politicians are honest people and just assume it was always like this and there's no such thing as an honest politician. Perhaps they are right, and this trait is often ignored when it comes to leadership as being president. I often wonder if the textbooks relating to business are going to change anytime soon in the future. Ever since we had Trump in office, there have been some crucial changes in how we as a country do business, and will be doing business in the future. I mean, from tariffs to world trade and immigration at stake, one is to wonder how the game will be played and all these major changes going on in politics around the world. Going back to the different traits that successful leaders possess, I want to point out how integrity ties into being a successful leader, as it is the extent to which leaders act upon when they say it's the extent to which leaders act upon when they say they're going to do something. Leaders can be honest and have good intentions, but what good is honesty and having good intentions if the leader doesn't consistently deliver on what they promised? They won't be trusted. This is something that we've seen in almost every president in our lifetime. Presidents will claim they will do this and that and make promises, but I mean, how often do they live up to promises after they're actually elected? Self-confidence and believing in one's abilities is also distinguishes leaders from non-leaders. As self-confident leaders are way more decisive and assertive and more likely to gain others' confidence. Self-confident leaders are not afraid of admitting to mistakes. They view these mistakes as learning opportunities rather than contradictions of their leadership capabilities, which a lot of people do in these situations. I mean, even when things go haywire, strong leaders will remain even-tempered and consistent in their outlook and how they treat others. This is also called emotional stability. Leaders that cannot control their temper and emotions will get angry quicker and attack or blame others for their mistakes. These people cannot be trusted, and not having emotional stability is one of the many flaws managers and bosses have. Leaders are intelligent and have strong cognitive abilities. This does not mean that all leaders are necessarily geniuses, but what it does mean is that the leaders have the capacity to analyze large amounts of seemingly unrelated data and complex information and can observe patterns, opportunities, or even threats that many others may not see. Intelligence is something that can be difficult to develop, as the road to becoming more intelligent is difficult, long, and it takes up a considerable amount of time. Developing intelligence is a lifestyle choice as much as a trait. Graduating high school or college is just the beginning to many people's education, not a means to an end. Much of what is taught in school functions is a foundational language for lifelong educational experiences and enrichment. To develop intelligence, one needs to commit to formal and informal learning experiences. For example, with modern advances in the distant education, and by me and us, all of us taking online classes, it is much easier and more effective for me to take classes at the comfort, of our own home, at our own computers. Informally, one can develop a great deal of intelligence in any field of study by simply investing a reasonable amount of time into reading on a daily basis. Most people, they don't make a regular investment into their education in this fashion. If one could spend about 30 minutes of focused reading every day, it would give that person almost 200 hours of study time every year, if you added that up. Think about all the things one could learn from 200 hours of focused learning. I mean, you could do a lot. You could probably learn a whole trade. One of the great signs of being a successful leader who is truly intelligent is humility. The greater one's education, the better they are at understanding of how little we really understand. I mean, isn't that true? Effective leaders can actively demonstrate their intelligence by leading people towards understanding, even if they already know the answer. These types of intelligent leaders focus on helping others learn and do not boast about how smart they are. Being arrogant will just put others in a position where they are secretly hopeful that the leader will slip up and make a mistake or appear like a fool. As intuitive as it may seem, one of the most effective ways to exhibit intelligence is actually by asking questions. Leaders who learn from other people and asking intelligent, thoughtful questions will be more effective in enhancing the leader's intelligence credibility than just about anybody else. Also, good leaders need to know their stuff, and that means they should have superior technical knowledge about the business they run. Leaders who have a good knowledge of the business understand key technical concerns and decisions facing their companies. I like to include being forward-thinking, competent, and inspiring as important qualities for all leaders that should act upon them. Again, that was forward-looking, competent, and inspiring. These terms weren't mentioned in our textbook, but I think it's important to include them too. People want to follow someone who is not only confident, but is also competent. This does not mean that a leader needs to be the foremost expert in every single aspect and area of the entire company. But the leader does need to be able to demonstrate competency. By avoiding appearing incompetent is not enough for a successful leader to display competence. Some may assume the leader is competent because of their leadership position, but most people will need to see demonstrations of confidence before they decide the leader is competent. Leaders must also show competency in a way for others to notice, which can be a delicate balance, if you think about it. One of the downsides to this is that leaders can often draw too much attention to themselves in a way that makes them seem arrogant. Another pitfall is that minimizing other contributions could appear to take credit for other people's work. An effective leader should celebrate and bring attention to all the team's achievements. This is, one way a leader can bring out competency in their leadership as well. It's kind of like tooting your own horn, but without blowing it. Setting goals for the company, like financial milestones, can help a company achieve greater success. The main point to leadership is figuring out where to go from here, where you are. Sorry about that. The main point of leadership is figuring out where to go from here. While some leaders may know where they want to go, people won't see that unless it's actively communicated to them. Being future forward is an essential trait for any successful leader. A leader who is not forward thinking may suffer from not having a forward looking vision, or the leader may be unwilling or scared to share their vision with others. Leaders do not have a vision for the future. And managers or leaders that don't have a vision for the future are usually spending like more time in today, and they rarely have enough time to think about tomorrow. On a simplistic level, this can be easily solved by just like setting some time aside for planning and strategizing and thinking about the future. Just a little bit of time every week. Many times a leader will have, no plan because of the poor job they're doing leading in the present time. They create an environment in their organization or system that relies too much on the leader for their input in every single process, every stage. There are some leaders with a clear vision but do not wish to share with others. Most of this comes from the feeling insecure about their own credibility as leaders, especially if their shared view in things doesn't come about. They plan for something or they feel a certain way of something and it doesn't happen. Leaders will often run into issues sharing their vision when they start making promises to individuals, which goes back to the trait of honesty. For instance, if a leader promises someone they'll be promoted to a higher position, like a manager position next year, and a lot of times that promise is not kept, it's broken. The leader in this case might have good intentions and be basing their promise basing their promise on promotion on the organization excelling and meeting financial goals. But to the individual that has been promised promotion, they only hear that personal promise. So like when everything gets all messed up and you can't give them that position or raise, that's all that person is going to hear is that promise that you made to them, and that can be a problem too. So leaders can and should communicate their vision and goals for the future without making these promises they know they can't keep. If, however, a leader does need to make this promise to an individual, it should be tied to certain measurable objectives. People want to also feel inspired. There are huge classes of people who will choose to follow an inspiring leader, even if the leader has no other qualities. Must I bring Trump back up? Being inspirational means telling people how your organization is going to change the world. Inspiration can be just a matter of clearly communicating with passion. Being inspirational means showing people the bigger picture and helping them see beyond a narrow focus and understand how their part fits into the bigger picture. One technique many great leaders use to develop their ability to inspire is through telling stories. The stories, they can include examples of clients and customers, to fictional examples from the customers, or even historic myths and fables. Stories help the leader vividly illustrate what they're trying to communicate. When stories can communicate on an emotional level, they'll communicate deeper than just words alone, and this can potentially leave a bigger imprint in one's mind. Tapping into people on an emotional level is known to be way more powerful than communicating with just simple facts and figures, believe it or not. Learning to be inspiring is especially difficult for people with low charisma. This could be a problem, but inspiration can be learned. One way a leader could do this is by taking notes of the people who inspire them, and by analyzing the way they communicate. Look for ways, to passionately express that vision. There will always be a need for improvement in any business or organization. A small investment of awareness can give a leader significant improvements on this trait. There are dozens of other traits that could define what makes a successful leader, but successful traits alone are not enough to make a successful leader. Possessing these traits are just preconditioning for success, but it is difficult to shine as an effective leader by lacking these qualities and traits all those that I just explained. Leaders that have all these traits, or most of them, must also take actions that encourage others to achieve organizational or group goals. There are several behaviors and actions leaders can perform that help lead others to completing organizational and group goals. By initiating structure, a leader will structure roles of the followers by setting goals or deadlines, giving directions, and assigning tasks. A leader's ability to initiate structure primarily affects the subordinate's job performance. Consideration is the extent to which an effective leader is approachable, friendly, supportive, and shows concern for other employees, which also affects a subordinate's job satisfaction. Listening to employees' concerns and problems, consulting employees before making decisions, and treating employees as equals are all great behaviors to become an effective leader. According to that Blake Moulton leadership grid in chapter 14, apparently there's 5 different leadership style categories, which I somewhat agree with. A high or a 9-9 leadership is considered to be, the team management style, as work is done through committed people, and leaders display a high concern for people as well as a high concern for production. This is what a lot of companies strive for, or would want, at least. Interdependence through a common thread and organizational purpose leads to relationships with more trust and respect. In contrast to the high leadership, there's a high-low, or a 9-1 leadership. And it's a high concern for production, but a low concern for people. Efficiency in operations results from arranging conditions of work in such a way that human elements interfere insignificantly. And contrary to the 9-1 leadership, there's also the 1-9 or low-high leadership, also known as a country club style, and where leaders care more about having, a friendly, enjoyable work environment, a nice tempo, a nice pace, but they don't really pay much attention to performance or the production of the business. And then, of course, the worst kind of leadership, according to the Blake Moulton leadership grid, is the 1-1, the low, or I guess you could say impoverished leader who shows little concern for people or production and will do the bare minimum to keep their job. Finally, there's the 5-5, or they call it the middle of the road style of leadership, and that is adequately balanced and organizational performance by mediating the need to get the work done and maintaining the morale of people to a satisfactory level. This actual leadership, the middle of the road leadership, to me is the best and my favorite kind of leadership, because it balances both the people and the production to a level where the organization can effectively get work done and thrive. I agree with the textbook too, where it says successful leaders are not like other people. We are unique people. We do things differently. We think in non-binary terms, and we like to think outside the box. From taking my Myers-Briggs personality test this semester, I was able to discover a lot of things. And my personality ended up being INTP, and this affects my ability to be an effective leader. INTPs, like myself, they're pensive, analytical people, and they're focused internally, where their primary mode of living is dealing with things rationally and dealing with things logically. The second mode for an INTP personality is external and takes things based on one's own tuition. The initials INTP stand for introvert, intuitive, thinking, and perceiving. Having the INTP trait explains why I'm independent, creative, unconventional, and have strong interests in improving myself. INT personalities can understand complex theories and ideas, and they are known to be rational and impartial thinkers. True that. And for that, I'm very trustworthy, responsible, and honest. These are all good tie-ins for being a successful and effective leader. Good traits to have. This course has shown me so much about being a better manager and a more effective leader. Some of the fundamentals and terminology I learned here are probably not going to shine through in an academic sense. But what I learned along the way and the notes I took will and are currently helping me discover what kind of leader I am and giving me the tools I need to solve for real life business problems. We can observe almost any firm, organization, and business and apply what I highlighted in this video presentation to assess, who the managers are and who the real leaders are. The question on every leader's mind is often like, do they have what it takes to lead? What are the most important things leaders do? How does one transform a poorly performing, company, division, or department? And must I adjust this leadership or my leadership capabilities depending on the situation or employee? Why doesn't my leadership inspire people? These questions are what millions of leaders across the world struggle with every day. So I don't feel so alone knowing that I'm not the only person in the world who suffers from this kind of anxiety. The best leadership style, in my view, and what the textbook says, depends on the situation. In other words, no one leadership trait, characteristic, or behavior by itself, or a combination of all these things, will work well and solve all the problems and situations in the world and business. It's just, you play it by ear. Matching leadership styles, adapting leader behavior, decision quality and acceptance, charismatic and transformational leadership are also important aspects to consider when one wants to become a better leader. And those are also mentioned later on in chapter 14 too. But we get to see that there are some major differences in how management and leadership are viewed in the world. American organizations and much of the industrial world are under-led and over-managed. We see that all the time. We see that managers pay too much attention to doing things right, and leaders, well, they pay most of their attention to doing the right thing. This is the conclusion to my video assignment focusing on leadership on chapter 14. I hope you enjoyed watching.